loser of Dodgers Padres, with the Diamondbacks, with potentially the Pirates, with potentially the Cubs or the Brewers, with potentially the Marlins. I mean, the NL picture is a little weaker, I think, than the AL picture is overall, but still, it's you don't want to put yourself in a position where your only way into the playoffs is the wild card. But right now, that looks like that's what the Mets have done to themselves already.
John, how would you explain to the folks who have not paid attention to what happened to the Pirates over the last 2 weeks? How would you explain what happened in their fall from grace here? Is it just injuries? Is it just the law of averages? What's happened?
I mean, I think there was bound to be some regression at some point, but I think also the simplest explanation is they've just stopped hitting. I'll give you here from May 1st through May 10th, which incorporates their most recent losing streak and slide. The Pirates are, they rank third to last in baseball in WRC plus at 53. As a team, they're hitting 179, 270, 276. Their batting average on balls in play is a mere 240, the second worst mark in baseball over that period of time. Only the Twins have been worse in that degree. Their strikeout rate, 26.1%. Again, only the Twins have been worse in that span of time. What has also happened with the Twins in the last week? I'm just now looking at this. What on earth? But
whoever wins the AL Central is going to have a losing record. I want that to be what happens here. I need them to be under 500. Whoever wins
I'd also like to note every team in the AL East has a better record than every team in the AL Central. If this year does not convince Major League Baseball that divisional format is simply no longer a functional thing, I don't know what's going to do it, because you have both central divisions have effectively stopped trying. Mm-hmm. And whatever.
I won't join you on this boat. I love some real sicko stuff of the Twins getting to host another playoff series against the Yankees in a wild card round and just getting ousted immediately.
One more stat on the Pirates. Home runs hit since May 30th. Or since May 30th, since May 1st. Number one in that category, the Atlanta Braves with 18.
It's what we do. Ks and HRs. That's what Atlanta does.
29th in that category, the Pittsburgh Pirates with 3. Only Cleveland has hit fewer, and Cleveland has hit 2.
Cleveland, I feel like over the last 7 years leads this.
Cleveland. Ben Clemens wrote about Cleveland's offense for us this week and noted pretty convincingly that this is Cleveland. This is what you should expect from Cleveland's lineup. There is no power here. There's not a lot of strikeout. There's a lot of contact, but it's not exactly optimized contact.
And like Cal Contral's like, I'm doing what I can. What do you want me to do? Like, not come out and be awesome?
I mean, look, they're already making the right moves by doing things like demoting Zach Plesac, but regardless, the big problem the Pirates are into is they've just stopped hitting. And I think if you look at that lineup, I don't necessarily know that should come as a huge surprise. I mean, the big surprise was that lineup was hitting in the first place, because you're looking up and down and going, who the hell are most of these guys, Like, I don't really, like, I should say, Brian Reynolds, I think, is obviously a legitimate hitter. Carlos Santana and Andrew McCutchen are venerated veterans with, lots of success in their past. Brian Hayes is a great pedigree, if nothing else. Connor Joe seems like a nice guy. But again, like, this is not a lineup.
Sucks.
Yeah, and this is, I think, where you start to feel the impact of O'Neal Cruz the most, because that was legitimately beyond Reynolds, the other guy in that lineup who you felt like could keep chugging along regardless, who had the sheer talent and the tools to end up an above average hitter even amidst the swoons and whatnot. The rest of this lineup is not really that. It's which is not to say Jack Sawinski and Connor Joe and Austin Hedges. Well, Austin Hedges is a bad hitter, but that's not to say that like guys like Connor Joe and Jack Sawinski are without hope. But at the same time, like, that's not a lineup you're expecting to produce a ton of runs. So I think there has been some understandable and kind of predictable regression to the mean for some of those guys. The other part of it is that, again, this, as has always been the case with the Pirates, or seemingly feels like it's always been the case with the Pirates, when you're not spending money on the roster, when you're not bringing in, top tier free agents, when you're not, making trades to bring in those kind of impact players, when you are relying on guys like Sawinski and Ji-Hwan Bae and Santana, you do leave yourself more vulnerable to slumps like this, because you don't really have those hitters. And again, this is where Cruz would have been so big. You don't really have those hitters to boost things. I mean, consider the fact that right now the Pirates are starting Chris Owings at shortstop. I legit thought he had retired 3 years ago. I had no idea Chris Owings was still in baseball, Mm-hmm. This, when you look at who the Pirates have used recently, it feels a lot more like, oh yeah, this is the Pirates we were expecting. Miguel Andujar, Chris Owings, Tucupita Marcano. Like, these are nowhere near impact hitters. These are guys you're throwing out there because you literally don't have anything else. And I think similarly, pitching-wise, it's a little different because guys like Johan Oviedo and Rancy Contreras, and especially Mitch Keller, who looks like he's taken a really big step forward, Pittsburgh wants to develop those guys. They're not going to, and I think it, understandably and reasonably so, they're not going to sign cheap veterans to pitch in those guys' place. They need these guys to develop because they need to know what they have in them. But I think similarly, when those guys start to struggle and there's really no backup options there, when you're just letting these young guys take their lumps, this is what you end up with, And some of that is, the bad luck of injury of, like, say, Vince Velasquez being hurt, O'Neal Cruz obviously being hurt, Ji-Man Choi being hurt, not, because he is a very useful platoon bat there. Really, I think it really is just a matter, I think, that Pittsburgh just doesn't really have the horses to keep hitting like that, or to keep hitting the way that they did. And are they going to be as bad an offensive team going forward? No, I don't think so. But at the same time, this wasn't a good offensive team last year. You know what I mean? Like, this is not like the Yankees are in a slump and you're like, well, they're the Yankees. They're going to be better because look at all the guys who are in that roster. Again, just purely by WRC plus, last year the Pirates finished 28th in baseball with an 84 WRC plus. And for the most part, that lineup hasn't really changed all that much. There've been some shuffling at the margins, but the core of it is essentially the same. So, I think it sucks because I really, I think we were all enjoying the Pirates and what they were doing, the possibility that, hey, maybe there's, that maybe there's a little run here, maybe there's a little more than we expected. I think what we might be seeing is that this Pirates team, I think we're kind of getting that sense. I think what we're getting in this Pirates team is starting to see a little in advance what they might be going forward. Not just in terms of the guys they have now and how those guys are going to develop, like Sawinski and Bay, and now that they have Reynolds locked down long term and Cruz when he comes back healthy. But, the guys who are in that farm system and who are going to step up and help them eventually, like Endy Rodriguez, like, their number one pick from a couple years ago, whose name I'm already forgetting, and I really should not be forgetting, and I'm just kind of stalling for time while I look it up. Henry Davis, while they wait for Tamar Johnson, while they wait for, those guys are eventually going to be the guys who are going to make the biggest difference at the end, but we're not going to see those guys until next year, probably. Maybe we see Endy Rodriguez get a cup of coffee at some point in 2023, but otherwise, you're kind of waiting a little longer to see the kind of meat of the meat of Pittsburgh's system really start to come up and produce. And that includes the pitchers too. That includes that includes guys like Mike Burrows and Quinn Priester, who are both down in AAA right now. And I don't necessarily know, these are guys who, they've pitched a grand total of 30 innings in AAA right now. I don't imagine the Pirates are all that close to wanting to bring either of them up. But, I think what April represented for the Pirates is a sense of, like, there's hope on the horizon. But I think it was probably a little premature to be like, the hope is here now.
I like that. That was a succinct way to end it. I like it. And
thanks.
You know what's better? You play in the NL Central. Look at the Orioles.
And that's
making
the
progress, and they're still just kind of screwed.
That's the other thing, is that the ceiling for the Pirates doesn't have to be that high, because as we've seen with the Central, nobody's really trying and nobody cares.
Yeah, so they could be a playoff team easily next year. Like, there's a clear path for them to really compete next year.
And I think even regardless of what happens, well, I mean, regardless of what happens, but, depending on how the rest of the season goes, you can adjust that as needed. But like I said, I think April gives you the hope that, hey, this can actually be a playoff team relatively soon. Maybe not a playoff team with a super high ceiling, and maybe not a playoff team that ever really does more than, secure a wild card berth or maybe a surprise division berth, but at least a more competitive roster than we've seen out of Pittsburgh in the last 5 years or so.
Speaking of the NL Central, Jon Tayler.
Oh boy.
The Arizona Cardinals, also a train wreck. Everyone who's a Cardinal is basically a train wreck.
I was going to say, if you've named your team...